We got the seals, which take 3.5 years, as you can see there in blue. And that is the time in which the two witnesses will testify. Then the half on the right are the last 3.5 years in which the two beasts of Revelation will mainly rule for. Um, and that is the time of the last plagues or the bowls of wrath. That right there is half and half of the 7 years called the week of Daniel, right? The last week of Daniel mentioned in the book of Daniel, chapter 9. So, as you can see up here on the left, we have a scroll with which has seven seals, and that's what the seals um, are referring to. Seals that a scroll has. Once they are completely open, the Lamb will be able to open the scroll, which is the book of life, the scroll that has the names of all the people that will enter eternal life. So it is written that only Mashiach was and is worthy of opening that book. So that means that if Mashiach had not been sacrificed, because he says the pretty much the sacrificed lamb is the only one who is worthy to open the book. Nobody is worthy enough even to look at the book, according to what we read in Revelation. Um, so if Yahushua had not come to be sacrificed, this book would not have been opened ever. And if this book is not open, then eternal life would not be available or manifested. So that means that if Mashiach had not come, or even if the enemy had not killed Mashiach, this book wouldn't be open and nobody would be able to enter that predestined eternal life that Yahweh prepared for his chosen. So the beginning of the last 7 years is when the Lamb opens the first seal. And then he continues with the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. And that is found on Revelation chapter 6 and 7 and 8, which is when we go to the trumpets. So, as you can see here, when we get to the seventh seal, is when the seven trumpets begin. So, many times I've seen a lot of interpretations of the book of Revelation or the way the seals, the trumpets, and the plagues would manifest. And a lot of people, or there's a great part that makes it like first the seals, then a separated time, the trumpets, and then the plagues of the end times. So kind of like giving um a I don't know, a separated portion of time within the last 7 years to the trumpets, like in the middle of the seals and the bowls. And I understand why, because that's the way it is told throughout Revelation. But my point is that as we see when it comes to those 7 years, the first 3.5 years are the seals, and the last 3.5 years are the bowls of wrath. Now, the trumpets are found within the seventh seal because we see that when the seventh seal is open, then the trumpets start to sound. So the seven trumpets are within the seventh seal. There are other interpretations in which they mix them up and they kind of like say like the first seal, second seal, then a trumpet, then a third seal, then and it's kind of words, right? It's sadly confuses things a lot. But if we read carefully every chapter of the book of Revelation, it goes in order, and we see that when chapter 8, when the seventh seal is open, then the seven angels receive the trumpets and they start sounding those trumpets. And as we know, because Mashiach said, and it is confirmed in Revelation 12, the end times would be like a woman who is about to give birth. So the pains would be closer and closer to each other, right? In time. So that is why the seals will begin with a certain amount of time in between the opening of each of the seals. But when it comes to the seventh seal, the trumpets will manifest in a shorter amount of time than the seals did. Or we could say perhaps, well, it's not going to be exactly like that. Well, at least as I can see, but just to put it in a simple way to understand it, if the seven trumpets happen within the seventh seal, then the trumpets will last. The seven trumpets will manifest during the time that it took a seal to happen, right? Is what would logically be or mathematically. But um, just to connect it to the fact that the the plagues would be like the pains of a woman who is about to give birth. So they get closer and closer and closer to each other. And that's what happens when the trumpets come. And we see in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, that the virgin gives birth. That is the congregation of the chosen few. Um, and the men who, well, the son of this virgin mentioned in Revelation 12, of course, in a way references Mashiach, of course, and many people believe that it only refers to Mashiach the first, Yahushua. So they think that that chapter already fulfilled and they don't pay attention to it, not understanding that Yahuhanan or John was writing about things that had to happen still. So the end times are like the pains of a woman who's about to give birth because the congregation will give birth to the Son of Man, being that the second manifestation as the last one of the two witnesses mentioned here on the first half on the left. One of the two witnesses would be the second manifestation or the last, the prophet like Moshe. So when he is killed and resurrected, when he resurrects, is when one of the prophecies in the book of Psalms, chapter 17, says regarding David, in this case, the branch of David being raised in the likeness of Yahweh, meaning uh, that just like the birth of Mashiach through a virgin manifested in the literal sense 2,000 years ago, now it will manifest in the spiritual sense when the virgin congregation, the chosen few, will give birth during the resurrection of the last. When he resurrects in the likeness of, then that would be the birth mentioned in Revelation 12. And that is why that is when the second Exodus begins. And the beast tries to destroy the child, but the serpent, that well, the dragon, when it falls to the earth, it is because the prophet like Moshe, once the two witnesses are killed and resurrect, go up and defeat the dragon. So he's taken out and sent to the earth. And that is when that dragon, now a serpent, goes after the virgin, trying to destroy her because he wasn't able to destroy the child. But Yahweh will give the virgin, the congregation, the wings of the great eagle so that she may go to her place. And that is when the transformation happens. That is during the seventh trumpet, as you can see right here at the end, at the bottom. The seventh trumpet is the harvest, the transformation of the chosen few when the second Exodus happens. All points to that happening on the day, um, the 22nd of the seventh month in the true Hebrew calendar. There are many reasons for that, and eventually we will see them. And there are some of them already recorded in the previous chapters and the ones after. I'm just making here like a like well, saying kind of like everything that will happen in a nutshell to continue with the chapter. So it is during the seventh trumpet that the harvest will happen. The three woes that will manifest. They happen, as we will see actually in this chapter, during the fifth trumpet. The second is in actually, um, when the two witnesses are resurrected, go up, and there's an earthquake that kills 7,000 people in Jerusalem and destroys a tenth of the city. And then the third woe is in Revelation 12 when the dragon falls to the earth and goes after the woman during the second Exodus, like I mentioned. And when the beast or the dragon who gives power to the beast is not able to destroy the congregation, it will go after the many. And that's when the many will die during a month, as Hosea 5:6 says. And that's when the great tribulation will happen. So the first woe, what we will read tonight of the fifth trumpet. Um, the second woe, when the two witnesses resurrect and what happens during that earthquake. And then the third woe, when the dragon falls to the earth. Um, so as you can see here, these are the trumpets. They happen during the seventh seal. Um, and if you guys have any questions, you can also make them on the chat, and I'll look at them when we're done. So the first seal, unlike what most people believe, who think that is the Antichrist, in fact, as I explained many times, it refers to the beginning of the two witnesses giving testimony, uh, which lasts 1,260 days, meaning 3.5 years. And it refers mainly to the witness like Moshe, the prophet like Moshe, as the rider who goes conquering and to conquer, the rider of the white horse. Everything about that seal is positive. They give a negative connotation to it because the rest of the seals seem negative. And I say seem because the fifth seal is positive, and the seventh has a positive thing too, which is at the end of it, the transformation will manifest. So, um, since the first four seals are represented by riders on horses, the last three of those four are clearly revealed as negative. The first one is positive. If it was negative, it would be said by Yahweh. It would put a certain thing to it, like he does every time. And what I mean by that is that Yahweh says that Satan can appear as an angel of light. So, angel of light seems nice, but we know that it is Satan, and that is appearing is just the appearance, not reality. And Yahweh does several, well, gives several messages throughout the scriptures like that, when he reveals, like for instance, also that there would be wolves in sheep clothing. He's telling us they are wolves, right? So in this case, in this chapter, Yahweh doesn't say anything negative. Everything is positive, positive, positive. Another issue that people have with the interpretation of it is that Mashiach is the lamb and he's the one opening the seals. So since Mashiach is up there and he's the good one, they just jump to conclusions and say, well, this one has to be evil. This one has to be the negative one. That's the Antichrist. Because they don't understand the fact that there's still a manifestation that must happen. They still don't know regarding how he always said, I am the first and I am the last. He already came as the first, but still needs to come as the last. And it is sad that um, most churches don't teach about the two witnesses. And when they teach about the two witnesses, most of them just teach a wrong doctrine regarding them being two Jewish guys or being Elijah and Enoch, who will come down from heaven on a cloud in an amazing, spectacular way, in which, if it were to happen like that, everybody would believe directly, no doubt. And other than that, we see as I always say, that when John the Baptist came, he was born from Elisheba and Zechariah, showing that Eliyahu would be born from them as Yahuhanan, as Yahushua said, he is Elijah who had to come if you can receive it. So Elijah, who was taken to heaven alive on a um fire um uh chariot, even though he was taken alive, when he came back as John the Baptist, he was born. That shows how a second coming happens. Even the first coming of Yahweh to this earth as Mashiach, they were expecting Mashiach to come from heaven in a literal sense. They didn't expect him to be actually born. So, and I'm not saying everybody, because there were several doctrines in that time as well. Some believe that he had to be born, but in a different way that he was born, or in a different place, and etc. etc. But there's one time when they said, regarding him being Mashiach, they said, but we know who his parents are. And they said that when Mashiach comes, nobody would know where he comes from. Pretty much also in another verse, making reference to him coming from heaven, right? Like as if he was going to come flying. But he came from heaven in a spiritual way. Of course, his soul came down from heaven as the image of the Father and entered the flesh provided by Miriam. So when the end starts, Yahushua at the right hand of the Father opens the first seal, and then on the earth, the manifestation of the last, the ministry of the last begins. He who will confirm the covenant. What covenant? The one that Yahushua made 2,000 years ago, the new covenant. So the last confirms it, as Daniel says. But even in Daniel, Christianity says that that prince is the Antichrist. So they take it to the other extreme, sadly. In this first seal, Yahweh says that he who goes out goes conquering and to conquer. So if that was the Antichrist, there would be issues, because that would mean that the enemy is going to win. So I know we're not in that chapter, so I'll just go ahead and continue. But first seal is the beginning of the two witnesses. Second seal, it will be the third world war. The third seal will be hunger across the earth. The fourth seal will be well, several things that will happen as a result of the war um and the hunger, famine, pestilence, and by that time, a fourth of the population will have died, and that would mean, pretty much, according to what they say, uh, the number that we are at the moment, that would be like 2 billion people by the fourth seal, right? So there would be around 6 billion people on the earth. Then the fifth seal is when the martyrs who are in paradise, who are in Sheol, the good part of it, they will receive bodies. They receive bodies without sin, but they won't be able to come out of paradise yet until the transformation happens, meaning until the seventh trumpet. The sixth seal will be pretty catastrophic. Um, Things will happen in the heavens. A lot of things will happen in the heavens, most likely on that moment, that day. Um, the What they would call the inversion of the poles will happen, and I say they would call because of the term poles, but I mean magnetic poles, as in, or extremes, I should say, perhaps, north and south. They will switch, so north will become south, and south will become north. Um, most likely firmament will move a lot quicker than it does each and every day. So that will make an effect that, as John says, it will appear as if a scroll was um rolling, right, like as if Yahweh is closing the scroll, like uh or well, finishing the book, because the prophecies are written in the firmament as well. So it will look like a scroll. Um, then the seventh seal opens and the seven trumpets begin. Um, Even when we read what happens during each trumpet, it is, or it seems to be clear that they will be pretty close to each other, each and every trumpet, as if they were a result of what happened during the sixth seal. So what will happen during the sixth seal will be so catastrophic that it will pretty much give way or cause what will happen during the seventh, well, the first six trumpets. Well, in fact, I should say the first four, because then the fifth and the sixth, which is what we are going to read tonight, um, are something a bit separate. And then the seventh is the harvest. So, with what I just said, we can see that the first seal is positive. So is the fifth. The seventh seal is the opening of the seven trumpets, so nothing bad happens. So in that way, we could say it's positive. And then the seventh trumpet is positive because it's the transformation, the harvest. So from seven seals and seven trumpets, which would be 14, we have four which are positive. So that leaves us with 10 plagues. So during the first half of the 3.5 years, meaning I should say during the first half of the last 7 years, which are the 3.5 years, there will be 10 plagues happening. That's why there are two witnesses testifying and prophesying, because it will be the second Exodus. So just like Moshe and Aharon, there will be two witnesses, the prophet like Moshe and Eliyahu as Aharon. And they will prophesy 10 plagues, just like the 10 plagues in Egypt. And at the end of them, there will be an exodus. The chosen few will flee to the mountains when the false Messiah appears, the revelation of the abomination of desolation. So that would happen a few, well, we could say, well, yeah, very few days before the seventh trumpet. So right where you see one of those orange arrows, that's when the abomination of desolation will manifest. The chosen few will be taken, and then the last seven plagues will happen. At the end of them, as you can see, the war of Harmegiddo, and right before that, the wedding of the Lamb. I hope that's clear.